Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the CR Sports Podcast, Season 5, Episode 10. Unfortunately, Colin is back for some terrible takes on the NFL, but he's back.
Yeah, very, very big week over the Christmas week, and wishing everyone a happy holidays as well as we approach that gap week between Christmas and New Year's, and only 2 weeks left in the regular season, so a lot to sort out, especially in the AFC.
Yeah, big week for playoff implications. Couple good games this week. Should be an interesting week to talk about.
Well, I know you guys, we've seen what happened over the Christmas Eve and Christmas games, and even like games before that were on Saturday, the Christmas Eve. You can say we learned a lot, but you're seeing a lot of the same playoff teams basically compete, and they're falling into the same spots that we've had them placed for a little bit now. Now, you look at the Buffalo Bills, a resurging team that obviously a lot of people that listen to this who are around here like to talk about. They had a kind of a confusing, weird game against the Chargers, and the Chargers didn't pull out because they never pull out close games, but weird game for the Bills, and that track and story on Josh Allen continues to grow. As when are the Bills really, really good? They're really, really good at home with that home environment. On the road, they sometimes lose a little bit of that, and that's even with the Chargers who have no fans.
Yeah, to me, this game was pretty much set up for the Chargers to win. The Chargers had a long week after playing on Thursday night last week, and the Bills played on Sunday. This is the Chargers' first game after firing Brandon Staley as well as the GM. It's a West Coast game, time zone change for the Bills, and it's a Saturday night home game on Peacock for the Chargers. And obviously the Bills didn't play their best football, but with all the circumstances granted in there against them, they were still able to pull out a win. And this is a team that the Bills, it feels like they lose a lot of these games. It feels like they blow out teams when they win, and they lose a lot of close games. So to see the Bills go on the road and pull this one out, I know it was against a backup quarterback in Easton Stick, but it's encouraging to see that they're starting to string together wins and not just show up for big games.
I think it was encouraging to see that the Chargers and Easton Stick, after getting dropped 70 points on them, came back and really made a statement by saying we can compete with Buffalo, and it kind of shows how Brandon Staley wasn't a good coach with the Chargers, and with him, immediately when he's gone, they compete with a good team, and it goes right down to the wire.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers played surprisingly decent, better than they have been playing. I mean, a lot of people forget this is the same Bills team that lost to the Patriots. So it's kind of an eerily similar game, similar team, but, this is really a game where I think, what a win is a win. You're not necessarily, jumping with joy after that win, but you're not mad. A win is a win in the NFL. No game is guaranteed as a win, no matter who you're playing. So just keep going forward, and they've strung together a few good ones.
In the NFL media, they love to say, what did we learn? What did we find out about this team? What is the new narrative around this team? I think nothing changes for the Bills. You didn't learn anything. You go, oh, good thing you didn't lose that. It's just, okay, next game, we'll see what happens. And setting up a big game Week 18 against Miami is hopefully what Bills fans are looking for. And obviously they weren't looking for the result on Christmas Eve when the Dolphins defeated the Cowboys. We'll go into that right now. As that was a close game. 22-20, Dolphins won. Cowboys, their narrative that everyone surrounds them with is can't win on the road, continues to grow. They're a completely different team versus on the road and at home. At home, they are dominant. They blow out the majority of teams that they play. I think they've blown out just about every team that they've played at home this season. Well, including the Philadelphia Eagles. And so they've blown out every team at home. They play the Lions this upcoming week at home. And when you look at what they did on the road against Miami, you say you can't have the fumbling at the 1 yard line. Immediately when you see that, you go, there's an issue. You had a 14 play drive in which you drove it right down the field, and Hunter Lipke, a guy who's a rookie this year and he's undrafted, comes in and just kind of blows it in the beginning of this game. So you see that and you go, this might be one of those typical Cowboys games on the road. Nothing really goes their way, and it was that until late when Dak Prescott really put the team on his back on a game, almost you could have said a game-winning drive, a game-leading drive, a touchdown to Brandon Cooks. Dolphins came up big. They were calm. They were clutch. Tua and Mike McDaniels down the field. Excellent. Terrific. Right down. Super calm. Showed poise. Take the clock all the way down to the end of the game. Kick a game-winning field goal. That's how you win games in playoffs, and the Dolphins showed that they have that playoff material.
Something interesting I want to take away from this game is when Dak doesn't have CD, it kind of seems like this offense is flat in a way. They can't really run the ball well with Pollard. They have Jake Ferguson, who's a really good weapon for them. But other than Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb, I feel like this offense is not that great. It's kind of one-dimensional in that sense.
Well, I would say it's one-dimensional because you don't have a run game.
Correct.
It's because the focus can be so on, okay, here's CeeDee Lamb, and you mentioned Ferguson. Cooks has been good for them as well. Gallup is a guy that haven't really gotten involved as much since he tore his ACL a couple of years ago, and it's been hard for him coming back. But he's also a red zone threat for them. He's a big target. He's good at getting toe taps in. So they have weapons on offense, is what I'm trying to say. And you thought Tony Pollard was going to be a key piece on that coming into the season, and he really hasn't been. Only one game over 100 yards this year. That was Week 3 against the Cardinals, in which they lost. So you look at this run game, and the other teams aren't really afraid of it. And Tony Pollard, you got to be able to score a touchdown. The play before Lipke fumbling, he just gets stopped. You got to go down lower. You got to run to the outside and just dive for the end zone. So a lot of things are what if they did this. It feels like it happens too often with the Dallas Cowboys, and that's something that Dallas needs to work on. And it's hard too now with only 2 weeks left in the regular season.
Yeah, I feel like Rico Dowdle might get a couple more carries in these next few weeks just to try it out.
Yeah,
I mean,
Colin, they give him care. He's been good in the beginning of the year. Recently, he's been banged up and hurt, and quite frankly, the last 3-4 weeks, Rico Dowdle hasn't been the same back that you saw in the early parts of the season. So I don't know if it's a lingering injury. I know he had an ankle injury and a hamstring injury going on, but they need a guy, and they don't have one at running back right now. That's why you don't pay running backs, and we talked about this in the summertime when those running backs and Austin Eckler are leading the charge, saying running backs have no power. They don't get paid fairly. They don't get treated fairly in the NFL. It's for good reason. They collapse fast, and besides Christian McCaffrey, pretty much.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys, the narrative that they're not good on the road, it's less of a narrative and more of a fact. You look at just their team stats as well as Prescott's stats, significantly worse on the road. And the track they're going on, as long as the Eagles take care of business against the Cardinals and then the Giants again, the Cowboys are going to end up in that 5th seed. And the 5th seed most likely means winning 3 road playoff games, which I can't see this team doing right now. So unless the Eagles are to drop another game and the Cowboys move back up into that 2nd slot, I don't like their position right now in the playoffs. I know the NFC feels like it's reeling right now, and the AFC feels like it's playing a lot better, but just looking at the NFC as a whole, especially with the 49ers losing, it feels like it's more open than people think. A couple weeks ago, it felt like we had the Eagles, Cowboys, and 49ers are the clear favorites, and I still think those are the top 3 teams, but I think the gap's closer than people realize.
And when you look at Dallas, as we finish this up, and you look at Miami, Dallas's issues also have been defensively. Last week, or the week before that against Buffalo,
defensive line.
they can't, without Jonathan Hankins, they can't stop the run. And Jonathan Hankins, I think, is actually a really underrated piece in this defense. And to say that about a guy who's a defensive tackle and is one guy in this defensive line, you can't be so reliant on one. You have to have people that are able to fill in and solve the issues with the run game. And it wasn't just the run game, though. Their defense wasn't even that bad against Miami. It was bad from the sense of almost every single time the Dolphins got the ball, they got points. And if you're getting points as an offense every single drive, you're doing something right. I know if you say you're limiting the Dolphins to 3 at times, that's a good thing. That's a win for the defense. But in a game when your offense fumbles the ball on the 1 and there's nothing that Dak or the quarterback, the guy of this team, the leader of this team can do about it, it doesn't. You need more than that. You need stops. And I know that people like to talk about MVPs, Defensive Player of the Years, Offensive Player of the Years, all that conversation. And it's kind of ridiculous that a guy who's one of the favorites in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, Micah Parsons, hasn't been called for a holding penalty in over 9 games this season. Not one, which is a crazy stat. There's video evidence, picture evidence of him getting held, and this is not me saying as an excuse as a Cowboys fan. It's just that nothing seems to go their way, and it's especially apparent on the road. And then you look at the Dolphins. The Dolphins, a team that had not be a over 500 team this season. Now everyone just kind of says, all right, you did that. Check off that box. And they're good. With a healthy Tua Tagovailoa, this offense with Tyreek Hill, it's easy for him, pretty much. Tyreek's almost open every single time. And what more could you ask for as a quarterback having a receiver like that? And you got Devon Achane in the backfield. He's a rookie who's been amazing for them. And Raheem Mostert having a career year as a veteran. So this Dolphins team, dangerous in the playoffs, and watch out for that offense.
Yeah, I know the Dolphins hadn't really beaten anyone, but I didn't really view the Dolphins as a fraud. I think have always viewed them as a contender, especially with that explosive offense. And they beat a good Cowboys team on their home field on Christmas Eve, but the narrative is just going to keep growing against the Cowboys, and I just can't trust them on the road right now, and it looks like they're going to have to go on the road in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think this is a picture-perfect win for the Dolphins. Kind of caught right in stride, moving right into the playoffs. I think they're going to be trending upwards into the playoffs, and that's right where you want to be. And I think they're a perennial threat in the AFC.
The Dolphins are in a very interesting spot right now because they're a game back of the Ravens for the 1 seed, and they're in Baltimore this weekend. So if they beat Baltimore and either they win Week 18 or the Ravens lose, they get the 1 seed. If they lose their next 2 games and the Bills win their next 2 games, the Bills win the division. So this is a Miami team who could get the 1 seed or fall back even as far as 5 or 6 possibly and be a wild card. So all they really have to do is win one of the next 2 to ensure a top 1 or 2 spot. But they have 2 of the hardest games on their schedule coming up right before the playoffs. So this is going to be a team that's battle tested going into the playoffs.
And you just talked about the Ravens a little bit. We can go into that game. That was the biggest game of the weekend. That was on Christmas night. That was last night. And the Ravens took it to the Niners. They went to their house. People said the Niners can't get blown out. They're not one of those teams when they're healthy. They can't get blown out. The 3-game skid. They were missing Trent Williams. They were missing Deebo Samuel. People said Brock Purdy's the MVP. Brock Purdy also threw 3 picks in the first half. Brock Purdy looked awful last night. The Ravens completely played the Niners game against them. They switched it. It was an Uno reverse. They said, we're going to take it to you. We're going to beat you up. We're going to beat you down mentally as well. And the Ravens gave if you want the blueprint on to beat the 49ers, out physical. I don't even know how to say it. Outlast their physicality, I guess. Punch them in the face first. Be stronger than them. If you can do that, you're going to be able to compete with the 49ers, but I don't think there's many teams in the NFL that can do it. And I think the Ravens are built for winning football games like that on the road.
There's a few takeaways for this game for me. I think a lot of people were hesitant to call Brock Purdy the MVP. Everyone knows it's the scheme. Everyone knows it's not actually Brock Purdy. But in his defense, I think 3, maybe 2 of those picks weren't really his fault. More the receivers. I think the Ravens showed that this 49ers team is definitely beatable. I think the Ravens' defense is the most underrated part of their team. It's definitely top 3 defense in the NFL. Kyle Hamilton is one of the best players in the NFL, maybe the best defensive player in the NFL. I think he should be the best. I think he should get the Defensive Player of the Year. Okay. But that's just my personal.
I think Jadeveon Clowney's actually a bigger piece on that defense than a lot of people think, and probably bigger than Kyle Hamilton. He's been unbelievable. He's had a resurgent season on the defensive line.
Are you crazy?
He's had a resurgent season on the defensive line. His sack totals are so high. You saw him last night. They could not block him.
That's the worst thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Look up Clowney. Look up Clowney's stats.
That's a laughable take.
Look up Clowney's stats.
That was horrible.
The move on the defensive part, moving Kyle Hamilton from that strong safety and that back line to the free safety where he's able to roam around, which is what he did in college. That's why he got so many interceptions and he made so many plays in college, and you see that's what he's doing now in the NFL. And he just completely revolutionized the Ravens' defense. This is a unit that's just been – them and the Browns have been pretty much the best 2 defenses all year long, and the 2 linebackers between Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen, it's hard to find a weak spot in the Ravens' defense. And I'm not going to press the panic button on Brock Purdy or the 49ers. Like you mentioned, some of the interceptions, maybe not his fault. Obviously, they didn't play a good game. The Ravens looked like they were a lot more ready to play than the 49ers, and Brock Purdy can't play like this in the playoffs for the 49ers to have a chance. But this Ravens team is a lot more legit than I thought they were, and I think you have to mark them as the best team in the NFL after this game.
I'm just confused because I think Roquan Smith is also a better player than Kyle Hamilton on that Ravens defense. He has completely transformed. Patrick Queen as a linebacker himself, as the guy in the middle for the Ravens, is not what you need. Roquan Smith is. Kyle Hamilton isn't the physical piece of that defense. It's Roquan Smith.
He's the best player on the defense.
But he's not the most physical guy on the defense.
That was the thing that made him.
Because being the most physical guy means you're the best player, Mike.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No, I said that's what they needed against the Niners.
You know what Kyle Hamilton's known for? It's his physicality at the safety position.
You're talking about how he's a ball hog.
I'm assuming he's not physical as a safety.
You're talking about how he's a ball hog.
I'm assuming he's not going out there and pancaking linemen like a linebacker would. I mean, he's a free safety.
I think Clowney's been underrated this year. I think people counted him out. They didn't give him credit for what he's done in his career. He's gone to the Ravens. It felt like he should have been a Raven his whole career. And Roquan Smith, what a trade by them to get him and put him in this defense. He's transformed the defense. I think Roquan Smith is the biggest piece. And Kyle Hamilton, A young guy, he's been unbelievable at the safety position. I don't think he's as good as you guys have said. He got up and there's just picks kind of like bouncing into his lap. So I don't know if that's the exact definition of the defensive player of the year, Colin, but he's a very good player. And
Not that first interception just came into his lap when he read Purdy. When he read his,
there's one that bounced straight up into the air. And
there was also one where he read his eyes perfectly.
If you guys don't want to give Brock Purdy, you don't want to say it's your fault throwing the pick, then don't give a crazy credit to Kyle Hamilton.
All I'm saying is that it's not a very hot take that Kyle Hamilton is the best defensive player on the Ravens. It's been apparent all year long.
I think it's a hot take that he's the best defensive player in the league.
That's not what I said. And
he said.
And you just finished arguing that Roquan Smith has been more impactful.
I think he is.
Roquan Smith has not been better than Kyle Hamilton this year.
I think he is. Well, we'll move on.
Lamar Jackson's probably the MVP too. He's probably going to be the MVP after this game.
Which is weird because his stats haven't been incredible this year. It's hard to.
I
think Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey might have a problem with that.
Well, no, I agree, but the thing is, you could say about this is, wins are a quarterback stat, so that's probably why he's going to be the MVP.
And it's a quarterback award. It's not going to go to Tyreek Hill or McCaffrey, which it should go to one of them, but they're not going to do that.
But I think that's another bigger question too. Are wins always a quarterback stat? Because I don't think it should be. You don't. Well, because a lot of times people are like, oh, he's on a bad system, like Justin Herbert. People say, oh, he's a great quarterback, but his coach sucks, his team sucks.
Well, yeah, I don't think it should be, but a lot of people do.
Well, all right. No, that's what Colin thinks.
What do you think?
Me, I think that it's hard to say because you look at games and the quarterback can do everything right. He can put his team up 1 with a minute left and the defense can completely blow it. Josh Allen against the Chiefs, 13 seconds.
That's what I was thinking.
Dak Prescott this last weekend put his team up put his team up. Defense gonna make a stop. Drove right down the field.
Of course, Dak Prescott.
You look at other quarterbacks. They've gotten quote unquote screwed by their defenses, or they've had a bad team or bad defense, and that happens a lot of the time. And I don't think Herbert's the best example because I think he is a little bit overrated, especially what we saw this year. But it kind of does depend. And since the Ravens did just beat the best team in the league on the road, he's going to be the front runner for MVP, especially after coming off a really good performance.
Yeah, it's hard to label wins as a quarterback stat, but at the same time, there's plenty of quarterbacks on teams who have definitely given him more wins. But overall, I don't think you can say that wins are a quarterback stat just because it's different for every team and every scenario is just a little bit different.
And Garrett, that's a good point because you look at the Niners. Brock Purdy isn't the reason for all their wins. You can't credit Brock Purdy with those wins.
Yeah, I think everyone knows that.
But you look at other teams. You look at Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, he doesn't have a supporting cast around him right now. A lot of those games.
I don't think he's playing well either.
He also has no one to throw to. And
who did he lose after last year?
Well, Juju Smith-Schuster, I guess, is a huge piece. But
one guy he lost.
Kadarius Toney's terrible. Sky Moore is not good either.
Rashee Rice has been really good.
Rashee Rice has been a good rookie, but again, he's a rookie. And if you have one guy who's really like a number 2 or number 3,
he does have Travis Kelce.
And Travis Kelce's aging. I think that was my other point that I was about to make. He clearly has hit the age block where he's not quite as good as he was in the past, and that happens to everybody. It happens to every player. You don't know when it's going to happen, and it seems it's happened with that. So quarterback wins stats overall, it's just weird because some quarterbacks carry their team. Also for the Chargers, all those wins can be credited to Justin Herbert. Their defense is terrible.
Yeah. I think that argument can pretty much be summed up by the Bills and Eagles seasons because Jalen Hurts, I don't think, should be credited with a lot of the Eagles wins, whereas Josh Allen pretty much deserves every Bills win that they have.
Yeah, Josh Allen is win or lose. How he plays it determines whether the Bills win or lose pretty much.
The Bills' defense has been really good, though, too.
That's true.
Even with a lot of injuries, Matt Milano losing him, that's a big part.
Yeah.
And so I think that defense has stepped up a lot of times.
But I would like to say about the Bills, if they can establish a run game, you don't have to rely on Josh Allen. And
you saw that in the Cowboys game.
I mean, that's a really dangerous team.
And something that was really weird to me and concerning as a Dallas fan is that you saw them against the Chargers, the Bills, try to run the ball, and they really dim it a lot.
Yeah.
James Cook looked like a normal guy.
Yeah.
And why against the Cowboys did he look like Barry Sanders? A lot of question marks there. Maybe just didn't show up to play.
Defense.
Yeah, but they just ran through the outside. They was just
Yeah.
toss plays. They
Yeah,
didn't go
literally.
through the middle.
It wasn't just James Cook. Even the backups.
No, it was mostly James Cook. He had
got most of the
170 rushing
because
yards.
he got all the carries.
Yeah, he was.
When they brought the backups in, they were doing just fine as well.
I mean, I think the Bills' offensive line has gotten a lot better. Connor McGovern has been good. Osiris Torrance has been really good.
Osiris Torrance is a big draft pick. And a lot of teams wanted him. I'm surprised he slipped that far in the second round.
Yeah.
All right, so we can talk about the Raiders-Chiefs game as long as we're talking about Mahomes. And the Raiders did not complete a pass after the first quarter, and they won on the road on Christmas Day in Kansas City.
Serious? That's a stat.
Yeah, after the first
He had
quarter,
62 yards in the
they
after
did
the first
not
quarter,
complete
so-
a
I've been
forward
impressed with
pass.
Aiden O'Connell too so far.
Aiden O'Connell's not the future answer.
Some put up 70, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was cool, but they put up 63, and Aiden O'Connell's not going to be the guy next year moving forward. But the Raiders are just, ever since Josh McDaniels got fired, they just have a new identity to them. They're just a grit and grind team, and they really showed it just grinding out all those rushing yards because there was no passing attack, and the defense came to play. I know the Chiefs' offense is really struggling, which, two words, it's Eric Bieniemy, and no one really wants to point that out.
I agree.
But this was a nice win for the Raiders. It keeps them technically alive, although the Chiefs look like they are going to win the division as long as they win one of the last two.
I think that the Raiders really exploited every weakness of the Chiefs. Their offensive line, the Chiefs' offensive line looked horrible.
They were blocking
They were-
zero people.
They were getting pressure on every single play. You saw Mahomes on the sideline
23 pressures.
just screaming at the offensive line. Now, granted, the Raiders' defensive line is actually really good. Obviously, Max Crosby is a game wrecker.
Underrated.
But then also on the other side of the ball, they ran the ball down the Chiefs' throat, and they couldn't stop it. I mean, you saw at the end of the game, it was do or die. They had to prevent a first down to get the ball back, and they just ran it for the Raiders ran it for 40 yards down the field, and it was just there was nothing they could do.
I credit Antonio Pierce a lot with this Raider resurgence. He's been the interim head coach for the Raiders. I don't know if they announced that he's going to be the coach next year yet. I think they did, but I'm not
No,
sure.
No, they
haven't.
didn't.
They
But
haven't.
everyone wants. I mean, you could hear the
I think-
announcers are saying, everyone's saying,
Yeah, I think
everyone
they
wants
will.
him to be the new head coach.
He's a former player. Didn't he play
Played
for the Giants? Yeah.
he was on Super Bowl team.
So that's kind of cool. He's a former player, different guy, a little bit different than Josh McDaniels, especially just by the whole energy that you see on the sideline. And you see that the energy in the locker room, players wanted to leave. Devontae Adams was sick of it. Now he seems like he wants to play and he wants to be there. And even without completing a
Had
pass.
one catch for 4 yards yesterday.
Yeah. Besides that, they just want to win. So I think that was a lot of the change. It's team first now, and it's not like worry about yourself. And Antonio Pierce, give him credit. He deserves to be the head coach of the Raiders next year. Just had him go into Kansas City and win. And it felt like I was watching the Bucs Chiefs Super Bowl when Mahomes was just running around constantly the whole game, and it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, as poorly as the Chiefs' offense played, and that defense is just legit. 28 out of 34 points scored in this game were when the Chiefs were on offense. The Raiders had 2 defensive touchdowns. That's the reason why they won.
Bad passes, too.
That Mahomes pick 6 was just not a good pass. If he doesn't throw that, they win. So, yeah, I know he doesn't have any help, and his offensive line's blocking nobody right now, but he needs to play better.
Yeah, and I mean, he has more turnovers than Josh Allen does, and it's kind of interesting because no one really pushes that narrative. But it's kind of interesting for the Raiders. It's going to be interesting to see what they do next year with the coaching position, because if you remember 2 years ago with Rick Versace, I think his name was.
Versace or
Yeah, he was the interim head coach. He did a really good job.
Special teams coach guy.
Took him to the playoffs.
Packers now.
Yeah, I don't know. He took them to the playoffs, and all the Raiders players wanted them back, but nope, they went and hired Josh McDaniels, and look how that turned out. So I think that'll be interesting to see what they do. Maybe they'll learn from their mistakes, but who knows?
I feel like you can't. Like he really messed up that time, so I don't know where they'd go with it. But overall, then we could talk about the other game on Christmas Day.
There's plenty of other games.
The Eagles Giants game. That was a good game by the Giants. Tommy DeVito, that story's gone. His Linsanity run is over. The Giants though, they hung in there. The defensive touchdown got them right back, down by 2, 18-20 at one point, and it was a comeback. 15 straight unanswered points by the Giants. They were down 20-3, and then the questions with the Eagles I think are still looming. They played a terrible New York team, and it was at their own place. You expected them to win, and they made it close. They made it look hard. They made it look like they were on the same level, and I think the Giants actually have a shot next time they play them, which is in 2 weeks in the Meadowlands, to maybe pull off an upset with a consistent quarterback and game plan going into that game.
I think Tyrod Taylor returning may help them in that game. Tyrod Taylor's better than Tommy DeVito. I think everyone knows that. Tyrod Taylor almost beat the Bills on the road. So
that was obviously when the Bills were playing terrible because they had Ken Dorsey still. That's the other thing. We didn't say that about Buffalo. Ever since Joe Brady's been placed there in the Buffalo offense, it's really changed. It's changed for the better. Ken Dorsey was bad. He was so bad.
I mean, statistically, he wasn't. They were really efficient offense if you looked at the stats.
Nothing.
But I guess it's hard to argue against.
They've been winning now.
I know. I agree. They've looked like a different offense. So I guess if you were to place blame on someone, Ken Dorsey's the one.
Yeah, the main 2 takeaways I had from the Eagles Giants game were that Devontae Smith said it best after the game. They're just not playing good football right now. I know they won, but the players, the mood after the game, no one was really happy in Philadelphia. This is a team who I think can still figure it out just because of how electric they were to start the year, but they are slumping into the playoffs right now, and they could still get that 2 seed if they just beat a couple teams with pretty red records towards the end. The Giants, obviously, again, and then the Cardinals, which I think they're going to find a way to win both of those games, but they just feels like they need an X factor right now, and they're not getting that. And on the other side, Brian Daboll is just an amazing coach. The fact that he's putting the Giants in all these games with positions to win, this roster should not be competitive in half these games, and Brian Daboll is one of the best coaches in the NFL.
You look at the Eagles, right, and they're an interesting team because you can say a lot of good things about them. You can say that they beat the Dolphins pretty bad at home. They did good there. They gutted out wins against really good teams, against the Bills in the game that it felt like the Bills should have won, against the Chiefs in the game that felt like the Chiefs should have won. And then it feels like everything kind of flipped. Something changed with Philly where they went on that 3-game losing streak. They lost the game to Seattle in which they should have won, where it's like, oh, Seattle gutted it out to beat you. They gutted it out against Dallas to beat Dallas. They did it multiple times. They did it against They did it a lot against bad teams too. Started off the season against the Patriots, beat the Patriots closely, gutted it out. The narrative kind of changed. Yesterday was a good bounce back for them in the sense of, okay, we actually won a game. You got to get this losing streak has to end. They stopped it. They stopped the bleeding for a moment. But I think there's bigger problems in Philly. The fact that you have to gut out a lot of these games, that's tough, and it's hard to do over and over. I think they showed that in the 3-game losing streak where you can't be playing like this on a week in and week out basis, and especially with injuries, and people don't know what's going on with Jalen Hurts. People say he doesn't look 100% healthy, and this offensive line is old. Jason Kelsey is an older guy, and I don't know. They're not the same team that they were last year. And in the beginning of the year, they were relying on A.J. Brown so much. I feel like he's kind of slipped away and taken a back seat to some of the other players at the receiver position in the NFL.
It's their play calling. Their play calling is horrible. They lost Shane Steichen last year. You see what he's doing with the Gardner Minshew Colts. Like that is a good offense with Gardner Minshew at quarterback and Josh Downs as your number 1 receiver. That's very impressive. He's done a great job, by the way.
Bad game last against the Falcons, but
still impressive nonetheless. And their teams have kind of figured them out on defense. They play man. They play a too high safety look.
Their secondary's terrible.
James Bradbury's awful.
Yeah,
he's terrible. He's really bad.
Correct.
I mean, it took Tyrod Taylor 1 or 2 drives before he just chucked it deep to Slate.
Yeah.
Should have been doing it all game.
Yeah. Well, they didn't. The baby Tommy DeVito.
Yeah,
screen passes and slants.
The Tommy DeVito playbook is like a college playbook or like a high school quarterback playbook where you don't trust the quarterback. And I know we covered we covered a team or two, Garrett, where it's an offense that's kind of similar to like that, but it's a play action. You just have them roll out and you have one option here. Tommy, here's your one read. If not, throw it away. And you saw that. Dable had enough of it, took him out, opened it up. They should have just opened it up because what do you have to lose as the Giants? Try and pull off an upset. That's all you're trying to do. And I think they're going to do that in the second game. I think that's one of the things where you play a team twice in 3 weeks. You can try things out the first time to learn for the second time. And I think the Giants learned a lot. And this Eagles third down defense is really bad. They can do good on first and second down, and it feels like on third down they collapse at times. And that's something they need to clean up. And I don't really think that the Eagles are playing that good of football right now, and I think that's a general consensus around the NFL.
Yeah, I'm not saying the Giants are tanking, but I also don't think that they're kicking themselves for losing these games.
I mean, they have nothing to lose, so they might as well just throw it all out there. I mean,
But these losses aren't the worst thing ever. Also, they're improving their draft stock. The other game on Christmas Eve was the Steelers-Bengals game where George Pickens finally got it going, and Mason Rudolph just applied a new energy to this offense that we haven't seen all year from Pickett or Trubisky. He will be the starter next year, next week as well.
Is he better than Kenny Pickett, Garrett? Mason Rudolph. Who would you rather have playing quarterback for the Steelers?
Well, I mean, I like to see a couple more games out of Rudolph, but right now I'd probably say Rudolph.
I think it's more of a Matt Canada thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's only our fourth or fifth game without Matt Canada, and the offense has already gone over 400 yards twice.
True.
But Mason Rudolph did look just a lot better, honestly. The Steelers just felt like they had a lot of energy playing on the holiday weekend at home. In a divisional game, the Steelers are 4-1 in their division now. And that's been the problem with the Bengals is they're 8-7 and they're 0-5 in the AFC North.
Oh, wow.
So they just, if they could just not play any more division games, they'd be fine. They're 8-2 out of the division, but these division games are just killing them, and that's the second time the Steelers beat them. Jake Browning came back down to earth, but I don't think either of these teams is going to find themselves in the playoffs. The Steelers, Mason Rudolph's the guy for the future. I don't think so, but it was nice to see the holiday spirit alive in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about Mike Tomlin potentially moving on from him. Maybe it just wasn't, not necessarily that Mike Tomlin is bad, just a change of scenery almost. And Mike Tomlin just went out there and needs to get them to 500 to keep his streak alive. And he looked like he really needed this one. And truly a great game plan. It looked like they just beat them from the first play of the game, really. And this is a Bengals team that was playing really well too, so it was a good one for the Steelers.
And outside of the T. Higgins huge touchdown, the Bengals offense really didn't do much, and they didn't have any big real plays that were electric and scored for them and were a spark play that they needed. Now, I have a take that I want you guys to hear. I've been thinking about this, that especially over the holiday weekend, and obviously Christmas Day was yesterday, and then Christmas Eve was the day before on Sunday. I was just thinking that I do not like NFL and Christmas Eve and Christmas together. It doesn't work for me because of this is my reason. My mood is dictated because I'm a fan. My mood will change, good or bad, for Christmas Eve and then for Christmas, and that's something that I don't want my Christmas experience, my Christmas traditions, my Christmas approach riding on. I don't want it riding on the Dallas Cowboys. I don't want it riding on the NFL. I don't want it riding on guys that I can't trust, especially on the road. And then I feel like football and Thanksgiving, that works well for me. It's just the Christmas and football. I don't like that my holiday experience is my mood is going to be affected based on how this team plays. I feel like it's not really, Christmas isn't about that, and I don't like those two together.
I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoyed sitting down and just watching the games, relaxing. I mean, it gave me something to do other than talk to my family, which can get old. But I enjoyed it. It kind of reminded me of Thanksgiving, a little less formal than Thanksgiving, I guess you could say. But I enjoyed it.
I don't know why, but I feel like there's something to appreciate with putting on a boring NBA game that doesn't matter to me on the background, something to do. Just have it on and then not really think about sports for a day. I kind of like that idea, but I don't know. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm very into sports, and when there's sports on, I'll watch. I don't really care.
I'll watch.
I don't really care what day it is.
You know I will watch.
No, I'm not gonna complain.
I mean, just because the Cowboys lost doesn't mean you have to be sad.
No. I wasn't sad.
Yes,
It was just.
I'll finish.
I'm telling you, I wasn't sad. What I go was I go, this sucks, and then I go, all right, now I have to pretend like I don't care, and then just like move on and.
Just tell your team to win.
If they won, like the
the
year before
they
did beat the Eagles and it felt amazing, but I don't want it riding on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm more surprised not surprised because Sunday's obviously the NFL's day, but the NBA is supposed to get Christmas. Like Christmas is the NBA's holiday, whereas Thanksgiving's the NFL's holiday.
It's all about money. The NFL is just they're gonna take any prime time they can get.
I mean, obviously the NFL is gonna override the NBA nowadays, but I'd have to disagree with you. When I'm sitting down, Christmas, done opening my gifts at the relative's house, it's not really bothering me that my favorite team's on or there's NFL games on. I'd rather enjoy it.
All right, that was my take. I don't know. It didn't bother. I wasn't like, oh, I refuse to watch. I wasn't like, I'm not giving these guys ratings. But I was like, I was into the games, but I was also at the same time like, oh, I'll take a break for a day or two. You know,
It was
that'd be
better. It was. I will say it was better than watching the Lions lose every Thanksgiving. That's for sure.
I think that's
Games-
fun to
the
watch.
games
It's
are
almost like
definitely more-
it's
tradition.
clockwork for me. I wake up, I go, oh, it's a 12:30 start. What is it? 12 o'clock something. It's kind of cool. Lions, they started off bad. Maybe they made a little bit of a resurgence, and boom, collapse, and it's time for some food. So that was interesting. These were the holiday weeks. These were the holiday games, and now we go into the new year with new teams in the playoffs, new things going on in the NFL, and a lot more to talk about on the CR Sports Podcast. So
College football.
we'll look at that. We talked about that. I think that might have been our last episode, Garrett. Around that time where we talked about the committee and who they put in the Florida State controversy and
The Dodgers.
and
MLB,
you could say it. The
MLB and its broken system. We can talk about it another time.
Dodgers spending over $1 billion on two players. Two players.
The MLB's broken.
And they're
we can
paying
own this.
only one of those players, I think $2 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shohei Ohtani is getting $2 million a year.
that's like a loophole. That should not be allowed.
I don't know. Some sports agent or the guys that are smart with money, they figured that out.
I mean,
and-
they're still gonna have to pay him. Yeah, in the future, they'll be good
yeah,
now.
the guy.
but-
It doesn't really.
I'm sure. I mean, they'll have more than enough money regardless of their.
Yeah, it does. The Dodgers have unlimited money. It doesn't really matter how much they spend on him now or later.
But it does matter for the tax, though. That's the thing.
For his personal tax, yeah.
The luxury tax
Yeah.
for the team,
It's-
because they're not going to eclipse over like 300 million or something like that when you're only paying him
Yeah,
two,
it doesn't.
which is ridiculous. Because
money's kind of fake when it comes to the MLB. As soon as there's a salary cap, then it'll be fair.
But the thing, we'll talk about this a little bit right now. The thing is that you have high incentive to be underneath those thresholds in the tax because they take away draft picks, they take away the way you're able to build up your farm system, and
Yeah, but why do draft picks matter if you can just buy the best players when they're in the big leagues?
That's a good point. Frustrated Orioles fan. We'll go into it more into the new year. We thank you for listening to this edition, and stay tuned, everybody.